You're not your body. You're not your mind. You're not your stories. You're not your past. You're not your future. You're not your relationships. You're not the bank account or the car that you're driving. You're not the culture that you're brought up in. Yes, you're not the labels that you wear either proudly or with heaviness. You are not those things. You are the spirit that lives within this body that has an unknown amount of time to explore, grow, and learn and be here on this beautiful planet. Hello, gorgeous human, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Spiritual Rebel podcast, where I'll be helping you understand everything there is to understand about being a conscious, powerful, grounded, centered, excited, enthusiastic, positive human being. And yes, you will have your shadow and you'll have your issues like all of us do, but your life won't feel dominated by shadow energy, but you'll be able to live more in the light. So today's topic is all about the exciting and most powerful question that will help you start to really create transformation in your everyday life. When I started asking myself this question, things started to rapidly transform in my life. I wasn't even thinking about questioning myself in a more deep and profound way before I started working on myself over 30 years ago. And when I got introduced to this question, it really changed the whole dynamic of how I approached life every single day and how I saw the world. It helped me shift perspectives on my world view. It helped me change how I saw myself and my role in the world. I would say before asking myself this powerful question, I was dominated with a lot of negative thoughts and feelings in my day-to-day life. I often felt confused. I often felt disconnected and afraid. This question allowed me to start unpacking, untapping, and getting connected to my more deeper, profound truth, my essence, my spirit, my heart. And the question was introduced to me by my very powerful teachers in India, where I started meditation with the age of 22 years old, after having been in a marriage that didn't go well. Ended up finding myself divorced after the relationship had lasted for 3 years. And the reason that marriage didn't go so well, or other things in my life for that matter, was because I didn't know the answer to the question, that powerful question. And that question is, who am I? Who am I? A lot of us not only don't ask this question, but we are not taught the importance and the power of not only asking the question, but answering it, right? So when you hear the question, who am I? We immediately think of the superficial levels of self. And by that I mean your body, your story, your name, your age, your vocation, if you're a doctor, a lawyer, a coach. And these limited ways of observing who we are is why we can end up spiritually drained and feeling like we're not living our fullest joy, love, and potential. The question, who am I, leads us to look deeper than the layers that the society tells us that's who we are. So in my case, looking at the surface, I would be a 53-year-old Black woman born in Zimbabwe, world-class spiritual development mentor, a wife, a best friend, a sister. I would take different roles, right? An aunt, a cousin, a friend. And these are labels, right? These are labels that belong to the body. When you start to ask the question, who am I? You start to dig deeper than the level of the body. And that means you will start to go to places of understanding your spiritual self, right? The part of you that came into this world with nothing and is going to leave with nothing. There is an aspect of self. They've even done some scientific tests that when the spirit leaves the body, there's like a couple of, whether it's 20 grams or something like that, the person is lighter by some grams because the spirit has left the physical body. Now, whether you believe that life goes on or doesn't go on after death, it's not really important. But what we know for sure is that this life has a time frame between birth and death, and this time frame is unknown. It is unknown. Some people have come into this world for literally hours, and then they've been in this body and left after hours. Some people have stayed for 120, no, maybe not 120, let's say 110 maybe. Maybe it is 120, the longest human life. I would have to look at the Guinness Book of Records for that. I have no idea, but it's somewhere around 100 years old, right? The mystery of not knowing is why we need to dig into the question of who am I? Because if you live your life each day as if you have time, you will start to miss the magic, the divinity, the other aspect of being in this body that is often not spoke about, except either through some form of religious scriptures, because there is that connection that we have been taught through religion to our divine self, right? But it's so important to understand that even if somebody has chosen to walk away from any type of religious organizations or ideas, you still need to interact with yourself, because inside of you is a spirit, a soul, an essence. And that essence, when you connect to it, allows you to start experiencing the world and yourself in a completely different way. It's like, I often describe this as having the experience of living in a house when you don't know the answer to the question, who am I? You're living in a house that you believe has one room, and you never go outside, you never explore. There's a door, but you stay in this one room. When you start investigating into the question, who am I, and start to discover more of your dimension, your capability, you open a portal, you open the door, and then you discover that there are many rooms, not in this beautiful house, there's many rooms, and there's outside. There's outside, and you've been living in one room. I always keep mentioning this because I think it's so important. I wish I'd learned this stuff when I was at school, learning how to read and write, learning about maths and science and geography, learning how to play basketball or tennis or whatever the sports that we did. I feel like the world so desperately needs an education system that helps humans thrive in their humanity. And to thrive in your humanity, You need to be connected to your spirit, to your heart, to your soul. And this question, who am I, is like a finger pointing to the moon, right? And you need to follow the direction and see where this is going to take you. So when we start working with the question, who am I, we start to unpack levels of consciousness, of awareness that goes beyond my name is Mahima. I'm an international best-selling author. I'm the founder and creator of the Mahima Mindset and the Spiritual Rebel podcast and an award-winning program. I am this. I am that. So the question of who am I leads us into a void of emptiness, of expansion. I'm no one. I'm nothing. I'm everything and nothing. I'm here and nowhere. I am love. I am stillness. I am whole. I am multidimensional. I am infinite. When you would understand what I'm saying, not with your ears or your brain, but with that spiritual self, with that soul self, think about it. You didn't come here to be just those labels, to be a wife, to be a cousin, to be a sister. You didn't come here to earn money as a doctor or a scientist or a coach. You didn't come here to be limited just by doing from that labeled space, labeled, a label, right? This is where you belong. You have this education, so you belong here. And if you want to do or be that, then you're going to need this, and you're going to need that, and you're going to need that. So we have all of these rules that the society has created to show you who you are and who you should be. Once you start working with your inner essence and exploring, you start to question everything that you've ever been told about who you are. And it's the most wonderful and exciting journey you'll ever embark on. It will take you from looking externally, like open eyes, looking for things outside of yourself, to closing your eyes and going and journeying inside. It will take you from thinking all the time and being afraid all the time to being in stillness, to being in peace, to being connected to another aspect of yourself. A self where you don't need the label and you don't need to play that role. Because in all of these superficial levels of self, we can get lost. We can get lost to the point that we become self-obsessed. Those roles take on our identity, right? And we can get lost in being a mother, lost in being a wife, lost in being a personal growth mentor, lost. And in that, we lose the connection to ourselves. We lose this spiritual self. We lose ourselves. So the invitation in this podcast and, in everything that I do and all the work that I do is to invite people to reconnect to themselves beyond the story of I am a doctor, a wife, a nurse. This is my name. This is what I do. To connect with your spirit, your heart, your essence, and then start to live being connected to that. Letting that guide your decisions. letting that self, that spiritual self, that divine self, interact with the world from a place of trust, from a place of delight and receiving. Yes. And I know it's hard to understand this with the mind. And that's why I invite people into transformational experiences. Because if you've experienced even once what I'm saying, you are ever transformed, right? And that experience requires stopping. It requires letting go. It requires going inside. I had the wonderful opportunity to visit Joe Dispenza, and some of you may know about him as you're listening to this podcast. And he has amazing, beautiful scientific evidence that shows us, right, the truth that mystics have already known since centuries. We have the potential to create magic, to create miracles, to heal our body with using our mind, using our energy, right? In his work, he's helped, I would say at this point, probably millions of people, maybe it's hundreds of thousands of people, right? To journey inside using meditation and literally create miracles in their body of curing themselves and healing themselves. Not from just physical symptoms, but also mental symptoms of that people have suffered in lifetimes. Now, I have experienced the same thing in my work. I have seen people come into events, whether it's a 3-hour event, a 3-day event, or a 5 or 10-day retreat. And literally their faces transform. The way they speak transforms. The way they walk and move in their body transforms. And that happened to me too when I came in contact with this powerful question and work of inner healing, inner journeying. And I remember and will never forget my first ever meditation when I was able to receive and move from identification with being a girl, a Black woman, a lost, divorced woman, to being my whole, abundant, expansive, spiritual self. Literally, in one meditation, I shifted my consciousness from little me to expanded, powerful, spiritual self. And that's why I'm so passionate about this, because I would have lived in my fears, in the limits of my mind, had I not had the opportunity to be in that first ever meditation and get to firsthand experience a shift in my consciousness that allowed me to start really enjoying life. It was almost like that light switched on. You're sitting in the dark, suddenly there's light. That's when you realize there's a door. There is a door that has been there the whole time. Okay? That's when you walk through that door, open to find there's a whole lot of rooms and a whole world outside. That is exactly what happened to me, guys. And that's why I'm here saying, let's get this information to as many people as is humanly possible. Okay? You came into this world as nothing, with nothing, okay? Probably as nothing is not, it's not correct, right? You came into this world with nothing and you're going to leave this world with nothing. So everything you do here is about how much can you experience. How much can you experience the world in the most gracious, playful, and positive way? And I know that some of you are thinking, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here, right? But Mahima, There is so much negativity in the world. How can you just sit here and talk about, spiritual self and divinity and feeling wholeness and abundance and all that juicy stuff? What about the actual dark crap that's going on in the world, right? And I'll be the first person to tell you that you're absolutely right. There is shadow in the world. I would say that it's something I teach my students, and it's called the nature of reality. Okay? And so the nature of reality on planet Earth consists of happy, sad, good, bad, dark, light, strong, weak. This is a fabric. It's integrated. You wouldn't know happiness if sadness didn't exist. Happiness would be meaningless, right? You wouldn't know light if there was no darkness. So on planet Earth, we have this duality. We have a dual world. And to live your fullest consciousness and to live your divine essence or light or spiritual self or whatever you want to call it, you need to be accepting that both of these things have its place within this world that we're living in here on planet Earth. Now, if you don't want light and if you don't only want light and no darkness, if you only want happiness and no sadness, then here's my message to you. Move to another planet, okay? Because on planet Earth, both of these two things exist. And in order to raise your consciousness and live your fullest self, you need to be fully and totally embracing of both these energies. Yes, of understanding that this dance of good and bad, happiness and sad, light and dark is a necessary fabric of how planet Earth is set up. And when you connect to yourself and you start to create distance between, your ego, it's living through the eyes of the ego and living through your spiritual self, you're okay with the fact that there will be some shitty things happening. Yeah, sometimes it will happen through nature, not just humans. There'll be storms that sweep through and destroy buildings and homes and houses, right? So it's not just humans that create, or are we creating the storm because we are screwing up the ozone layer and therefore, causing these things to happen? There's so many different ways of looking at all of this stuff. But my point is this: you're not here to be a label. You're here to experience your divine spiritual self. You're here to learn how to use your mind to create. That's literally what I've been doing since this awakening that I had. I've been creating a new pathway. So with my old belief patterns and my old thinking, I would literally not be living in $1 million property in Switzerland with beautiful lake views. I definitely wouldn't be in a 26-year conscious relationship with a very beautiful and extraordinary human being. I definitely would not have been able to hold the space to be able to attract, hundreds of thousands of people from all over the world coming and participating in the stuff that I've been doing over these 30 years that I've been engaged in this work. And I know this because I have lived my life very intentional and conscious since I'm 22, 23 years old. And I have many people around me that came from the same school as me, came from the same country, same background, same education level, that have not been able to create this level of success in their lives because they didn't deep dive the question, who am I? They didn't have the opportunity to understand that they weren't just the thoughts that kept repeating in their heads or the emotions that they kept feeling, that they weren't just their relationships with others. Yes, like I'm a wife or I'm a mother or, I'm a teacher. They were not able to take hold of the whole part of them, right? The spiritual part of them, their true self. Yes. And why are some people going to come to this message and some people not? Again, it's the nature of reality. It's not good or bad. It's like you don't ask, why is this tree big and why is that tree small? Right? So in the world of consciousness and people developing themselves, there's no right and wrong. There's no, I'm better than you because I, figured out who I am spiritually, and you're less than me because you're still living in the identity of your ego mind. This is an ego trip. If you have real spiritual awareness and consciousness, you accept that everything is unfolding perfectly as it needs to. Some people will find their way back home in this lifetime. Some people might move on in their journey and have that awakening at some other point. Some people maybe already had their awakening and coming, with eyes open into this world. So you start to understand there's so much more to the world and life than you've been previously thought to think about and to understand. You open your awareness when you're willing to start asking questions, questioning everything, questioning your heritage, where you came from, the people before you, what they did well, and also what they didn't do so well. Yes. Questioning your current situation, what you're doing well, and what maybe you need to improve on. Yeah. Questioning your future, where you're going, and what you want to unfold and become. Please continue asking powerful questions. But I'm here to also tell you that there is no question more powerful than the question, who am I? There is no question more powerful than the question, who am I? And let this question guide you back to understand this. And I'm going to close this podcast with this. You're not your body. You're not your mind. You're not your stories. You're not your past. You're not your future. You're not your relationships. You're not the bank account or the car that you're driving. You're not the culture that you're brought up in. Yes, you're not the labels that you wear either proudly or with heaviness. You are not those things. You are the spirit that lives within this body that has an unknown amount of time to explore, grow, and learn and be here on this beautiful planet. So I invite you to discover, to close your eyes, to meditate, to go inside and discover who you are, discover your spirit, discover your essence, discover your divine self, discover the person that's capable of creating miracles, of transforming, of healing, of supporting the world in a beautiful way to shine, because that shine comes from within. Please share this podcast with as many people as you know needs this message. We need this education to start learning about things that we should have been taught. I should have been taught this when I was learning, at a young age, much younger than 22 or 23. I think I was lucky to find this message at that age. If we start spreading this soon, before we know it, kids will have access to this in the schools, and we will start transforming the world one human at a time, but on a bigger scale, because humans need this. We need to come back to ourselves. Thank you, love you, and can't wait to share more on my next podcast. And stay tuned because at some point I will be inviting guests on this podcast to even share more of this juicy wisdom and knowledge. Yes, so until then, you'll be enjoying all of the juiciness that I've, been keeping. I haven't been keeping it, but that I want to share with you that of over accumulated years that I've wanted to do this podcast, right? So I feel like I need to share that wisdom first, and when I feel I've shared enough of that, then I'm going to be super happy to get into conversations with other powerful and beautiful thought leaders. Okay, angels, love you and have a wonderful time until we meet again. Joy, love, and peace to you. And keep asking the question, who am I?